Hey, and welcome to our explainer. Have you ever had one of those moments where you felt like the universe was trying to tell you something? Well, today we're diving into a really fascinating idea from an author who thinks he found exactly that. Not by looking up at the stars, but by looking down at a simple deck of playing cards. It's a pretty wild question, right? But that's the core idea we're digging into. The author suggests that a simple game of chance can show us a pattern that might just connect to the very fabric of reality itself. So let's unpack how he makes that leap. So it all kicks off during a game. And we're not talking about some high stakes poker tournament in Vegas. It was a popular Chinese card game that led the author to a really strange observation. The game's called Zheng Sheng Yo, which you could translate as striving for the top. The whole point is just to get rid of your cards before anyone else. The winner of a round? They're called the upstream player. Seems simple enough, but this is where it starts to get weird. The author started noticing this persistent, almost unbelievable pattern. He saw that the most powerful cards in the deck, the kings, seemed to just magically find their way into the winner's hand. He figures it happens about 80% of the time. It's as if the cards themselves already knew who was supposed to win. So, how do you even explain something like that? Well, the author's first thought wasn't about probability or random chance. Nope. He went straight to philosophy. He was convinced he was watching some kind of universal principle at work. He called it the Tao. Now, in Eastern thought, the Tao is basically the natural cosmic flow of the universe. The author's big theory is that the winner, that upstream player, is just more in tune with this flow. So the Tao just makes sure the kings end up where they belong. And for him, this isn't some kind of magic, it's a fundamental law of the universe playing out on the card table. But here's the million-dollar question. And to his credit, the author asks it himself. If this 80% rule is a real thing, why can't we just prove it? Run an experiment, track the cards, and get the hard data. Well, his answer to that is where things get really interesting. He argues that the moment you try to consciously measure it, you actually break the pattern. And to explain this wild idea, he turns to a totally different field, quantum physics. The author makes a parallel to something called the observer effect. And this is a very real, very mind-bending principle in quantum mechanics. It basically says that at the tiniest subatomic level, the very act of looking at something fundamentally changes it. Think of it this way. A particle of light, when no one's looking, can act like a spread-out wave. But the instant you try to observe it, to pin it down and see where it is, it collapses and acts like a single, solid particle. The observation itself literally changed the outcome. And that is the core of his argument. He's saying the card game works the exact same way. When players are just in the zone, playing the game, the Tao does its thing and guides the kings to the winner. But the moment you start consciously observing, trying to track the cards to prove it, you interfere with that natural order. You break the flow, and the pattern just disappears. So how does this idea get bigger than just cards in physics? Well, the author spins it into a whole philosophy for life, contrasting what he calls intentional versus unintentional action. He uses this classic old proverb that really nails the idea. It taps into an experience we've all had. Sometimes, when you try way too hard, when you want something too much, it just doesn't work out. But other times, when you act without obsessing over the outcome, success kind of happens on its own. So the author's take on this is pretty clear. The intentional flowers, that's us, with our focused, goal-driven effort, all that desire and conscious meddling actually disrupts the Tao. The unintentional willow, though, that's effortless action. It's in harmony with the natural order of things, and so it flourishes. He believes this isn't just about gardening, it's about everything we do. Okay, so from a card game, to the Tao, to quantum physics, to a philosophy for how to live, where does this incredible train of thought finally end up? Well, it leads the author to 5 pretty radical conjectures about the nature of reality itself. Let's just walk through them, because they are pretty profound. First, history as we know it might just be the total opposite of what really happened. Second, our 5 senses could be lying to us, and this reality we experience isn't real at all. Third, and this sounds familiar, the more you consciously want something, the more it slips through your fingers. Fourth, to find that harmony, maybe we just need to stop overthinking and just be. And finally, the ultimate goal is to simply live out your true nature. That's how you become one with that universal flow. And that brings us full circle. What started out as a guy just noticing something quirky about where the kings fall in a card game spiraled out into this deep, philosophical dive into history, perception, and what it even means to exist. It's a pretty incredible intellectual journey, you have to admit. Which leaves us with one final, powerful question to chew on. Is it possible that in our constant effort to control everything, to measure and direct every outcome, we're actually just pushing ourselves further away from where we truly want to go?